Welcome everybody to a very important episode of America UnCanceled here on CPAC Now. Today is a very important day because we're giving out awards to the very best members of Congress in the United States Senate who receive our top scores in our CPAC Scorecard. And we have a handful of people in the House and a handful of people in the Senate that seem to get it right every time they vote. And we cherish those members because they not only vote right, they tend to be the leaders too. And we have one of these great members with us here today, Congresswoman Mary Miller from Illinois. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you so much for giving me this award. It's quite an honor to receive 100% conservative rating from CPAC, and I'm so grateful for the work that you and CPAC are all doing to hold the government accountable.
Well, if that's what we're supposed to be doing, we're doing a terrible job, Mary, because it just seems like every time we turn on the TV or open up the newspaper, it just seems like this Biden administration is going into uncharted, unconstitutional territory. You've only been at this job for a couple of years.
Yes.
Give us your kind of overview. Do we have a chance to turn things around and get back on the right track, or are we on this downward spiral?
Well, I think a couple things need to happen. Our nation needs to return back to God, and we've probably even lost what the meaning of the word repent means. But our nation was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and I tell people, if you took instinct out of a beehive, you would have chaos, and when you take God out of a society, you have chaos. And so that's number one. Number two, Americans have enjoyed freedom and the ability to flourish. And so I think we've kind of gotten lazy. And it's time for regular Americans to really get involved. Number one, to find out how their elected officials are voting and what they're promoting, because you can't trust your elected officials, I'm sorry to say. And our government was founded of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the power is with the people, and they need to hold their elected officials accountable. So I appreciate groups like yours that are helping people by revealing how we're voting, whether we're actually staying true to the Constitution and our conservative values. And then we need to strengthen the family. The family is the foundation of our culture, and small business and our ag economy is the foundation of our economy, and we need to strengthen those two sectors.
Well, let me ask in a different way. You gave me an interesting theological answer, one that I'm unsettled with kind of knowing the answer. If we have to turn back to God, and I know Mercy and I completely agree with that's the first step, is being worthy of the freedoms that we have in this country, in this wonderful country that we've inherited. But does God wake us up, or is he trying to wake us up and we're having trouble rousing from our woke trance?
Well, sometimes when I look at the leadership we have and I hear the babbling that's coming out of them, I do have to wonder if God's judgment isn't on our country. But I think God judges nations and he judges individuals, but I think as individuals, we need to turn away from sin as God defined it, evil, and turn back to God. God has defined what is good and evil, and we need to open the good book and find out what it is.
Yeah, amen. That's exactly right. So I kind of think that I see inklings of a revival around the country. You see these young people we deal with at CPAC. I see my kids' own friends. I see what's going on at these Christian schools. I really do think that there's a bit of a firestorm going on around the country where people are seeing the insanity of these big cities, these big broken blue big cities, and they are turning back to truth, and they are turning back to fundamental principles. Inside the Republican conference, give us an insight. There's more than 200 Republicans. You have this slender majority. Is there hope and optimism amongst the Republican conference in the House? Do you feel like you're adding to your numbers, or do you feel like your numbers are so scant that you're feeling a little more despondent?
Yes. Well, I'm an optimistic person.
Good.
And we just welcomed our 20th grandchild, And so I'm going to fight to the bitter end to keep us free people and to allow our children to enjoy the freedom and opportunities that we've all had. So it's worth the fight. And I think courage begets courage. So there is a core group out here that I would say are not owned by anyone but God. And they want to do the right thing. And I think that group is growing, and I think we're influential. And, so politics is all about numbers. And we've found, I belong to the Freedom Caucus, we've found that we do have the numbers to be impactful and influential, and we're using it to hold our conference accountable. We cannot spend ourselves into oblivion and open our borders and, allow China to basically conquer us. And they're using, these, I call them passive placeholders. They get elected, they come out here, and they really don't fight the left. And President Trump showed us how to fight on the offense. And it's one thing to defend yourself, but we need to move forward with our good conservative ideas that will cause our country to flourish.
I can't agree with you more, and I can't agree with you more that the Freedom Caucus plays a critical role in speaking up for the kind of the conscience of our movement. The Republican Party is nothing without conservative activists from across the country, and the Freedom Caucus personifies that spirit. Now, you were in a Republican primary in your home state of Illinois, and ratings, we endorsed you the first time, we endorsed you in your primary, we're all for you, but our ratings are important for voters too, because they can actually look and say, well, it's one thing for someone like Mary Miller to get endorsed by all these great conservative groups like CPAC, but it's another thing to give them the roadmap as to show why you were different and more solid than your Republican opponent. Do the ratings have a big, important impact in these primaries?
Oh, I was so grateful that I was able to use that, because I didn't want to go attack my opponent personally. But for example, my district is one of the most conservative districts in the United States. And what a shame if they were represented by the sixth most liberal Republican in conference. And I didn't personally attack my opponent, but I laid out his voting record and like his CPAC score. I used that against him to win soundly by almost 15 points. So I'm very grateful for that. And, people come to me all the time, well, what can we do? And they're kind of flustered because they don't know who to believe. And it's hard to find out about who their representatives really are, because a lot of times the politician changes their narrative or their voting record depending on who they're talking to. So it's very important that you that you score votes. It's going to help true conservatives get elected.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because everyone likes to say they're a conservative, but really matters is what they do when that gavel hits down on the podium and the vote starts, right? How do they come down? One of the issues that has changed over time is spending. I'll even tell on myself, it always seemed like an esoteric argument that accountants would make about how much you can spend and how much in debt we were, and it seemed hard to relate to. But over the course, really since Chinese corona outbreak, it just seems like the government is just even more out of control than it ever was, and it seems like the payments on the interest of the debt are now to a point where I don't know how we reverse this. Do you think finally, the Republican Party realizes that if we don't lead on spending, we're actually gonna lose our whole country?
I would say some of the Republican Party believes that.
We're not there yet, is what you're saying.
No, we are not there yet. And it's going to be up to the American people to hold their elected officials accountable. But the other thing that people need to think about spending is it's driving bad policy. So in light of the Green New Deal, which I always call the Green Bad Deal, President Biden has, put trillions of dollars out to promote renewable energy, which is unreliable, and it's not even green. But having adequate energy is essential, and they're going to drive us to be a third world nation just by that. But the money he's spending is driving this policy. And that's why we need to cut off the spending for bad policies, and we need to defund the swamp out here. I know years ago I used to think the swamp was elected officials, but now that I'm here, yes, it may be some elected officials, but it's mainly unelected bureaucrats that are here for a lifetime, and they are running the show out here, and we need to defund these departments that are bloated. And President Trump had the best idea, is to move some of them into the interior of the country. I'd love to see the ag department move to Iowa or Kansas. I think it'd be great. Illinois.
Or Illinois. I can't agree with you more about what's happened in the swamp. And I've lived here ever since shortly after I graduated from college, and I've been here a long time. And I'm an old guy, Mary, so I've been here a long time. And the fact is that it is a hard left city where two government employees make a lot of money, and they live in nice houses, and they have a good lifestyle, and they've become unmoored from this idea that they're supposed to stay out of politics. They're now heavily engaged in politics, and nowhere is this worse. You brought up the Green New Deal. It's terrible, as each agency and department has created a Green New Deal kind of like sub-agency within their department. But watching Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and the Biden White House coordinate to try to put their next opponent in prison is just, it's breathtaking. And in the end, the House can only do so much to stop it. I mean, there's a lot of autonomy at DOJ. They have their money, they have their budget. What do you envision as the best way to try to make some of this outrageous unconstitutional activity stop?
Well, I'm so grateful for Jim Jordan and James Comer. They're doing great work on oversight and judiciary as well as others. So, they're peeling back the layers. I just finished reading the book, Laptop from Hell, and it's bad. We have compromised, person in the White House. It's a shame. But the problem is getting the message out to the American people. And so, I think everyday people are going to have to try to engage their neighbors, their family members, people they go to church with more. It's going to have to be a grassroots effort to get information out to people.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing is, it makes winning the White House in 2024 critical.
Yes, it is.
I don't like the fact that we have a bit of an imperial presidency where the executive power just dominates the other branches of government. I like seeing the Supreme Court grab its power back, and I like the Republican appointees standing up for the Constitution. I think that was a really nice change. But Congress, unfortunately, has taken a back seat to what the White House can't do, and the White House has great power. So I guess that what we could all do working together is make sure the American people know what's at stake in 2024. Be worthy of the White House, win it back. By the way, I'd like to win it back with a little bit of a margin so we can overcome the shenanigans. You're from not too far from Chicago. We've seen these shenanigans for a very long time. This is not a new phenomenon. I want to win so big they can't even take it away from us.
Yes, there's no reason for them to win. The left, the Democrats' policies are nothing but destruction. And I just want to say that evil is never going to retreat on its own, only when it's confronted by a more powerful force. That's my friend Pastor Erwin Lutzer's statement, and we need to be a force against them. We just can't be passive. I want to urge my fellow Americans to find their place in the work to save our great country.
Well, I went to Mass this morning, and the psalm today was about being, quote unquote, stuck in the swamp. And I'm not sure if King David knew that he was talking about Washington, D.C. in the 21st century, but it was very apt for our time. So I'll post that on social media. I encourage everybody to read the Psalm of the day. It was perfect for our time. So you're exactly right. We're involved in a very important struggle. You're a leader in that struggle, Congressman. We honor and value your service to your country. Keep up the good work, and thanks for being such a great ally of CPAC.
Thank you, and I appreciate your work too.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, and thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of America UnCanceled. Stay posted on Twitter as we post all the great photos of all the great champions in the House and Senate. God bless.